everybody. This is TJR.
And this is Robert Kinsler.
And, dude, we've been away for a while.
We have. Yeah, we've been, incognito or away from it all.
Yeah, we've had a long period of time where we have not been able to connect and get together and review albums like we've done. If you watch the show regularly, you know that normally we each bring an album and we talk about it and we play a couple clips. And just a lot's been going on, I think, in our personal lives.
Yep.
And I got sick.
Yeah.
And I'm still a bit hoarse.
And I have a very sick cat, too.
Very sick cat.
So, been 24/7, caring for the cat. So,
With this show, we are going to talk about all the albums that we have missed, the albums that we've been wanting to do on the show that we haven't had time to get together and do, and we've got quite a few albums to do.
We do.
And we're just going to talk about them briefly, recommend them to you, and play you just a little bit of one track from each album. And so let's go ahead. You're going to start, I believe.
Right. Yeah, well, why don't I start? I'm actually going to start with Chris Hillman, Biding My Time. Now, people might say, who's Chris Hillman? You know, many classic rock fans will know who he is.
Please enlighten us, yes.
He was a founding member of the Byrds. He's been in a lot of other groups. He was in the Flying Burrito Brothers with Graham Parsons, a real seminal country rock band, influenced countless people like Wilco and the Eagles and all kinds of people that have come after, I think. His role in the Byrds obviously was huge, and what's amazing is on this album he's joined by David Crosby, he's joined by Roger McGuinn, and it's just it's like he hasn't done an album in 12 years, and it's almost like he's looking back on his life. You know, the other plus is for fans that get this is Tom Petty actually got him to go back in the studio. He hadn't done an album, I think, in about 12 years. Tom Petty produced this album. He plays on this album. He plays harmonica and guitar. He wrote one of the songs. As far as I know, this might be some of the last studio work that Tom Petty ever did. So it's kind of bittersweet because it kind of recalls Tom Petty, but it's a beautiful return for Chris Hillman. I mean, I just can't say enough great things. He sounds terrific. He's a great singer. There's a real affecting and poignant touch to this album. You just, it's just very palpable. You can just feel it. So why don't we do this? Why don't we listen, to Given All I Can See, and just give people a sense. It is kind of, there's everything from kind of that Byrds rock to kind of what you would think of as Americana. And this is kind of an Americana song, but let's let people listen to a little bit of that and how pretty it is.
Absolutely.
So clearly I can see my heart and my soul. Forever I will seek the mercy and grace, given all I can see.
And I want to note on that song, Tom Petty's playing harmonica.
And very well, too, And nice song.
Yeah.
I remember you discussing this album when we did our memorial of Tom Petty. I remember you bringing this album up, and so it's good to hear some of that, and hopefully our viewers here have enjoyed hearing a little bit of it, too.
Yeah.
I'll go over get right onto my release here, which is Sky Trails by David Crosby. I purchased this on vinyl because I could. So I did.
That's a good reason.
And this, I was not a big fan of the last album he did, Lighthouse, but the one previous to that, Cross, I really enjoyed a lot. So I'm really, really glad that I really liked this album an awful, awful lot. Some critics, I think, based their reviews of this album on the first track and compared this album a lot to Steely Dan, which that's not a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination. But I think they must have based it on the first track, because the first track is very Steely Dan sounding. But the rest of the album, I would say, harkens more to Joni Mitchell. If you had to make a comparison, I would say Joni Mitchell than Steely Dan. There's definitely a strong jazz influence. I describe this album as just an album of very delicate beauty, punctuated by moments of intensity.
Okay.
And we're going to just check out a track here. It's called Capital, and it's about David Crosby's impressions of visiting the nation's capital.
And you think to yourself, this is where it happened. They run the whole damn thing from here. Money to burn, filling up their pockets.
you know, I really like that song, Capital. It's beautiful. I can see the comparisons to Steely Dan a little bit. You know, there's some jazz elements in it, but also it's still David Crosby, and I love the narrative detail and just, I mean, it's melodic. It's a beautiful song, but it's so effective at what he's trying to say in that song, and how it's communicated melodically and also lyrically.
It's definitely a very cynical political song, you know, looking at our nation's government. I don't think it matters what side of the political fence you lean towards in regards to this, because I have no idea what administration we were in at the time that he maybe got, you know, whatever trip he took that inspired the song. Who knows what administration it was during. But he is right about the idea of it's designed to impress you. It's designed to intimidate you when you walk in. I remember when I went to France and I visited the Louvre, which is an art museum, but used to be where the royal family would live of France before they executed them. And but this is where they used to live, and it was this huge palace of decadence. And when you walk into some of the rooms, you know, the way everything's designed, it's designed to intimidate you, to make you feel small and insignificant when you walk in. And, you know, I have been to a number of capitals in different states, and to a certain extent, a lot of them kind of follow that, that general rule. But I've never been to the White House, but I imagine that's probably very true of the White House. Once again, I think he's spot on with that whole idea with that. And at any rate, though, a great song, and this is one of the more, what I've referred to one as the more punctuations of intensity in this particular album. But check it out. I think it's more delicate than this song, but check it out. It's a great album. And so let's get to your next record.
Well, you were just playing David Crosby, and the artist that song, Capital, reminded me of a little bit was Bruce Coburn. No, Bruce Coburn is a legendary Canadian singer-songwriter, not as well known here in the United States, but you know, very celebrated. People recognize he's not only an amazing singer and songwriter, he's also an incredible virtuoso guitar player, both with the acoustic guitar and electric guitar. Just fabulous. This is his first album, I want to say, since about 2011. I'm going to perhaps have to look at my notes. Yeah, when he came out with Small Source of Comfort, and it's a great return. I've been loving this album, listening to it, and you know, there's just a beautiful sense about it, maybe like the David Crosby album, too. It's just somebody, maybe you get a little bit older, you've lived probably more than half your life, not to be grim, I've probably lived more than half my life, too. But I think you're looking at life differently, and when you're a great artist, you're looking how to take those feelings and those experiences in your music, and I think Bruce Coburn does that very well. He always has, but he continues as his life, you know, as he moves through life, as he matures and stuff, more things that are important to him he gets across in his music. Why don't we just listen to a little bit of States I'm In, and let's listen to a little bit of that song.
All right, true, good. Let's check it out.
One day I feel like I'm in control. Next I'm suspended in a bottomless hole. A drunk trying to shitty up a greased pole. All the sights I've seen in the depth of the world and the heart of a dream. Ooh-wee, all the places I've been, each one reflected in the...
I'll be honest, I'm not real familiar with Bruce Coburn, but I did enjoy that track. It was a good song.
It's a very probing album. There's songs that are just flat out beautiful, but he always has something to say, whether it's about the environment, whether it's about love. You know, a lot of his songs are political in nature, you know, very progressive politics. But even if you don't agree with his politics, kind of like I tell people about Neil Young, you're still going to admire his artistry. And he's a fantastic artist, and I'm a longtime fan. So
cool, very good.
Now, who do you have next that you brought in?
I have here with me the posthumous release from Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings, entitled Soul of a Woman. And so this is her last album, at least as far as we know. Who knows, there might be some tracks that have not yet been released that might come out later, and if there are, I hope they do. But right now, this is probably the last release from Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings. She did record this album while she was fighting cancer.
Yeah.
You know, she did record it. She would like rest, she would tour, she would rest, she would try to record, she would rest, and
Wow.
just tried to keep doing that, you know, for as long as she could until she couldn't anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at any rate, though, but this album is so full of joy. This album is just so full, and it sounds cliched to say this. It is so full of life. I don't care. It's so full of life. This is such a feel-good album. And knowing what she was going through at the time just makes it all that much more impressive. I can't recommend it enough. We'll play a little track here for you. Hopefully you like this.
Let's not wait any longer, yeah. Though the struggle goes so hard, all together we get stronger. It's a matter of time. It's a matter of time. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
That's just wonderful. Every time you hear Sharon Jones, you just want to celebrate life, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing that she was so ill, and obviously well chronicled her battle against cancer. But yeah, what a special lady and vocalist she was, and just a beautiful, wonderful song.
Yeah, I remember I read that on election night she actually got a stroke, not because of the election, but she just had a stroke.
Oh wow! God,
and
I'm so sorry.
She couldn't talk, but she could still sing.
Wow.
She could still sing.
That's
It's
amazing.
amazing. Yeah.
What a miracle. Yeah, just amazing. Yeah. And I know I've recounted that, but I did get to see her once at Doheny Blues Festival, and boy was she fantastic. I mean, one of the best. She was just, you know, definitely one of the best performers I've ever seen. Just so exuberant, and how she brought together generations of, you know, from young kids to older people, and it was just such an infectious spirit that she had, and it's just very sad that she's not with us. You know?
I know. Yeah. Check out her albums. Okay, go check them out.
Yeah.
So what do you got?
Now I've heard. I was trying to figure out how many new albums I've heard, but how many I've heard this year, I don't know if I've heard any better than the latest album from Pugwash. Now, Pugwash is actually the moniker for Thomas Walsh. He's a Dublin-based singer-songwriter. His style draws comparisons with XTC, ELO, and the Beatles. I mean, he's just a fantastic artist. This album actually was... he took up a longtime friendship with Jason Faulkner, who's the touring guitarist of Beck, but he's also been in Jellyfish, 3 O'Clock. He's worked with Air. He's worked with Paul McCartney. I think Amy Mann. He's just such an inventive and amazing guitar player. These two guys' collaboration, Thomas Walsh basically sings and plays rhythm guitar, and Jason Faulkner plays bass, keyboards, lead guitar, all kinds of stuff. It's just an amazing album. I have to say, I've been playing the heck out of this album. So, you know, I could continue to give accolades, but why don't we just listen to a little? Probably my favorite song on the album is called "What Are You Like," and let's listen to a little of that one.
I am ready to find out.
You needed me, so what do you like? Anyway, so what do you like? Anyway, tell me what do you like? Anyway, tell me what do you like? Anyway.
I'm sold.
Okay.
Yeah, I was sold on that song. And actually, I know, of course, with Pugwash, there's that whole XTC, ELO, which means obviously there's a Beatles influence too. You can't mention those two without mentioning the Beatles.
That's right.
But on this track, what I heard more than anything else is Tom Petty.
Wow. Okay.
For me. Now, of course, I realize it's one track. That's not going to describe the entire album. A good album, a good artist, it's going to, you know, different songs are going to be different colors, but just that track, that's what it made me feel. Tom Petty.
Yeah.
And it was good. I liked it.
What I wrote in my print review is that, you know, and you meet some people, they don't write music like they used to. Well, you know what? Pugwash does make music like they used to make it. Yeah. And the fact that this album was recorded, reportedly, I think I read, in 3 weeks, because it just blows me away. It blows me because you think of a band like U2 or something. They spend years and years doing an album and stuff, and I go, here this album is. It was done in under a month, and for me, it's one of my top favorite albums of the year. I mean, it's quite an achievement, you know.
So you have no excuses when you say they're not making music like they did when I was younger. You have no excuse. It's right here.
That's right. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
We
Oh, and I
them.
didn't even mention the name of the album. It's called Silver Lake.
Oh, okay.
And that's because I guess Jason Faulkner's studio is in Silver Lake, California.
Oh, wow.
So they named it Silver Lake. And I should have said that. And my apologies to
You have
Jason
made
and
up
Thomas.
for it now.
I have.
We've made up for it now. So I'll get to my release now, which is Concrete and Gold by the Foo Fighters. Now, the Foo Fighters' last couple of releases have not really struck the right chord with me, but not so with this one. This one really has knocked me out. I feel like on this album, well, first of all, they worked with a pop music producer who had never worked with a heavy rock band before,
Oh.
which is not to say that the Foo Fighters softened at all. There are even moments of screamo on this album. The Foo Fighters have always, though, in my opinion, right from the day one, have shown a strong Beatles influence. I mean, I know there's other influences going on with the Foo Fighters too, but there's always been a strong Beatles influence in the Foo Fighters, but never to me so much more than on this particular album. Even when they're being screamo, I can feel that. I can sense that Beatles influence, that strong influence in there. Other influences going on too, but this was just a really layered album. And Dave Grohl does some of his most surprising vocals on this album that I've ever heard. And so we are going to check out a track here for you. Here we go. And that was Sky is Neighborhood from Concrete and Gold by the Foo Fighters.
Yeah, I really like it. And once the song builds, and I see what you mean about when it almost becomes orchestral like the Beatles were doing and stuff. And I did hear the comparison. I think even if you had mentioned it, I would have thought of it like, yeah, it's a little bit different for them. But yeah, I really like that song. Really powerful.
The opening, of course, is obvious because you start with that glistening guitar with all those voices.
Yeah.
But then when it goes into the main verse of the song, it has that very rough edge, like something that could have been on the White Album.
That's what I was thinking. Like, something that John would have done. Yeah,
very rough edge. You know, rough around the corners. You know, that era of the Beatles.
Like so powerful that it's like, you know, and of course this is probably digital, but this tape's not even going to contain me. It's like I'm going to break out and break. You know, just has a very exuberant kind of power to it.
And, you know, some of his vocals, like I said, there are vocals on this where it's like, really, that's David Grohl? Now, this track he's recognizable, but there are other, like the opening track, he opens with this very soft vocal that he gives, and I'm almost thinking, oh, this is a guest vocalist, you know, but I checked the credits, no, it's David Grohl. I didn't see anybody else listed unless I missed it somehow, but yeah, he does some very surprising vocals on this album. Cool. So who do you got for us?
Well, I've actually have the latest album from Casey Chambers. Casey is an Americana singer, but she's actually Australian. But Dragonfly is just a terrific album. It's actually a 2-CD set. Disc 1 was produced by Paul Kelly, who's a very famous singer-songwriter also based in Australia. And the second disc was produced by her brother, Nash Chambers. But really like this. The stuff here goes kind of the span from Americana to authentic country to bluegrass. It kind of encapsulates a couple styles that you think of in roots music. She has a beautiful voice. She's a fantastic songwriter. You know, just can't say enough great things about her. I've had a few of her albums and always enjoyed what she brings to the table. And what I thought we'd maybe let people hear a little bit more of Casey. This is called "Ain't No Little Girl," and just a great song.
Excellent. Let's check it out.
You hold out your heart, your hand, and change the plan. And call yourself a man, but I ain't no little girl. No, I ain't no.
I loved that song. I want to hear the rest now.
Yeah.
You know, you were saying, you know, bluegrass, Americana. That song to me really verges on hardcore Motown soul.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, no, on that one, yeah, you could hear soul in it. You know, the overall feel of the album is definitely in roots music, but yeah, she's such an amazing vocalist and sings with such power. Yeah, I think comparisons to like soul music are, you know, I think those are, you know, good comparisons.
Yeah.
And you know, the thing I would say about her, and I'm glad you're hearing it more now. You're hearing these women that, you know, not to put down Shania Twain, not to put down Carrie Underwood or Big Little Town or whatever, but these women are tapping like they, you know, this is just some hard-hitting music. It's real. It's you know, it's just really powerful. It doesn't sound like it's being cranked out of a machine. You know, not, you know, because, you know,
it feels like everything's being played by real musicians.
Yeah.
It feels like it's probably mostly live. I would be surprised if it wasn't. The majority of it's played live, and it's capturing out that performance, and it doesn't feel so heavily produced in the wrong way.
Yeah.
The wrong way.
Yeah, and she's such a great artist, and you know, like you recognize it right away, the power of her voice and the way
power of
that
the song too.
Yeah, and the way the album is produced, it really reinforces all of her many strengths and really brings that to the core. And that's why an album like Dragonfly is so great. And the fact that it's 2 discs is great. That means you're getting twice as nice, you know. So
yeah, wow,
yeah.
2 albums. Two
discs
of
material,
yeah, that's great.
New material, great.
Okay, so it's interesting you should bring that up. So now I'm going to talk about the latest album by J.D. McPherson, Undivided Heart and Soul. And J.D. McPherson, I discovered with his last album. He was, of course, very 50s rock and roll influence, very roots rock and roll influence. In fact, a lot of his last album, Let the Good Times Roll, it felt like it came out of the 50s. This album, he moves in some new directions. He's done some collaborations. He's got members of Queens of the Stone Age collaborating with him. People like Butch Walker, and even his wife, Mandy, contributes on lyrics on the album's closing track. And it's still very rooted in the past, but there's definitely some little things going on here and there that you can tell that the collaboration is kind of put in some new blood. Not that he needed it, but it's definitely moved him in some different directions this time around. And I love the last album, and I'm really liking this album. And we're going to hear a track called Crying's Just a Thing That You Do.
I'm trembling and I'm cursing, I'm rattled more than ever before. You say there's nothing I could do to ever satisfy you, 'cause crying's just a thing that you do. Crying's just a thing that you do. Crying's just a thing that you do. I kinda held my head down for most of the ride, skimming through.
Now that's my first time hearing. It's J.D. McPherson.
J.D.
right?
McPherson, yeah.
Love that. It taps totally into like the retro, classic rock and roll sound, but there's also a modern day urgency to it. Kind of like, you know, I know I'm wearing an old '97 shirt. Kind of like what they do. It taps into something, something timeless and makes it its own. You know, it's not like trying to be verbatim like an old '50s recording, but it has that exuberance, that joyful quality that you think of with that early rock sound.
It wouldn't feel out of place.
No, not at all.
If it came out back then, but it doesn't feel out of place now.
That's right. Exactly. Really good stuff.
Glad you liked it.
Yeah.
Check out J.D. McPherson, everybody. And now, who have you got?
Now, I'm not bringing a stranger from an X-Pick. This is Noel Gallagher and his High Flying Birds. Now, Noel Gallagher was the lead guitarist, principal songwriter for Oasis. This is his 3rd solo album, and you know, I'm just telling you, I'm just loving this album. Before the album came out, there was so much talk that he was breaking away from kind of like the classic Oasis Brit rock sound and stuff. He's definitely moving in directions. He's expanding what he's doing. I just can't say enough great things about this album. I know, even I've read things like he says, hey, I know some people are you know, might be kind of, you know, put off by what I'm doing now. I'm not put off, but I found it very exciting. There's enough things that kind of recall his classic, you know, influences and what he, you know, namely the Beatles, that he's brought. But there's plenty of new things that he's doing here.
Okay.
You know,
I'm curious because I had not known that I've not followed his solo stuff, and I had not known that he was moving further and
Yeah.
further away from the sound of Oasis.
Yeah, his last album, I believe, came out in 2015, a couple of years ago. I think it was called "Chasing Yesterday." Just off the top of my head, I love that album. I wore it out practically.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's so great. This is great, but in a very different way. Is it great? You know.
Okay.
And I think all we have to do is hear a little bit of Holy Mountain, and then you'll hear how different this album is than the last one.
Holy Mountain. Let's check it out. Yeah, it does not sound like Oasis. I would not have recognized Noel Gallagher if you had played that for me blind without telling me first. It's good to hear that he's moving away from that. There is something about when you have a musical identity that's strongly compared to someone else that's very famous. Oasis was very strongly compared to the Beatles, and not always in a favorable way.
Yeah.
And so it's good to see that he's moving on, doing other things, exploring other territory. If anything, I would say that song, I don't know about the rest of the album, but that song has more in common with the artist I just mentioned, J.D. McPherson, in that it feels very strongly 50s influence, but almost verging on punk.
Yeah.
In many respects.
Yeah, it's funny when you listen to the album, and that's a sign of a great artist like him. It's like there's all these different things happening, and it could be a train wreck, but it's exact opposite. It's brilliant. It's great. Love this album, and you know, and he has, in addition to his regular band and stuff, he has some pretty cool guests on here. He has Jason Faulkner, the guy who we mentioned earlier that works with Pugwash. Paul Weller from the Jam is on here, and also Johnny Marr from the Smiths. Is on here. So he has some real notables that join him. But even if they didn't, it would be a great album. But the fact that they kind of collaborate and he's bringing all this energy and all these greats, probably many of these people that influenced him or his great contemporaries, he's really done something very special here. And the name of this album is "Who Built the Moon." I don't recall offhand if I said that, but that's his third solo album. Great album.
I'll be pondering that question all night.
Yeah.
Who built the moon?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah. Hey, more power to him, and I definitely think I want to listen to more of just see where he's going now.
Yeah.
Now that I've heard him going off in a totally different direction.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
I am going to talk about him. This is my last pick here. This is the latest album by Ali Handel, a female singer-songwriter who is here in Southern California and who has done a number of releases independently, but this is her first actual label release. That she's been signed to a label now. This is her first label release. And Ali Handel, I'll describe her as always about groove. If I could describe her one way, it's all about the groove. It's all about the soul with a little bit of Zeppelin mixed in as well. This is a song entitled Smoke More Pot. No, I'm not kidding. That's what it's called.
Okay.
So in control, so not rock and roll. I should have smoked more pot, dropped out of high school, joined an all-girl band, broken all my mom's rules. I could have been someone by now. I should have jumped on stage, blown up my curfew, hiked up my miniskirt, got a big tattoo. I would have burned so bright and high.
That is just a great song. She's a talent. I know I've actually received her album in the mail, so I'm gonna plan on reviewing that. And
Good.
Just based on what I heard there, that's enough to get me hooked. I mean, really like that.
So you see, if you get coverage from him, you got me to thank, Ali.
Okay.
There we go. But, when I saw that title, Smoke More Pot, before I heard the song is actually about kind of her feelings of, if I'd done more reckless things in my life, maybe I'd be a huge rock star by now. And I can relate to that. I used to say the reason why I never became a rock star was, one, I never pumped gas. I never was, or rather I should say, I was never worked pumping gas.
Yeah.
Two, I've never ridden a motorcycle. Three, I never got tattoos. That's the reason I never became a rock star.
That's right. That's right.
And I think that's where she's coming from with this track. But when I first looked at the title, I thought, wow, I wonder if this has to do with the fact that she recently had to battle cancer.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
she's young, but she's recently had to battle cancer. She's recovered, and let's just, we're hoping and praying that she stays, clean and healthy. But I thought maybe she was addressing that in that song in a humorous way. She's not. There are other songs on the album that, while they may not be addressing it directly, I think might be to a certain extent philosophically, because there's tracks with titles like "The World Don't Owe You a Thing," and another track called "I Had to Let Go," which is about letting go of the things that you can't control.
Yeah,
and these are kind of universal philosophical ideas that you can convey in songs. But I also have to wonder if her recent experiences didn't somehow influence that songwriting.
Yeah.
But this is an upbeat album. I know it's a serious topic, but this is once again strong, upbeat album, and a lot of good sense of humor to it too.
Yeah,
as well.
great. Well, I really look forward to hearing it. I'm glad cool. you introduced me to that.
So that was my last pick.
Okay.
What's yours?
My last pick is actually Richard X. Hillman. And he's done a number of albums. I have some of them some of them I don't have. But this is just a great album. He's kind of like an underground indie power pop hero, and he delivers on that reputation in full on this album. It's called Incognito, and you know what? Let's talk a little bit more about it, but let's play a little bit of the title track, okay?
Okay.
And it's called Incognito.
Incognito. Okay. Cool.
And that's Richard X. Hillman, and like I said, just a great surprise from this album. A lot of times you get the high-profile releases from somebody like a Beck or a Noel Gallagher or this and that, and you're going to throw it in right away. But I do try to always make time to put like Alejandro or something like Richard X. Hillman, and because what, the delights can be just as great. This. He's a great talent. He's actually played drums even with Brian Wilson.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, he's very talented, but, he's kind of an under-the-radar artist for many, many albums, and that's unfortunate because he deserves to be heard.
He's a multi-instrumentalist, right?
Yeah, he is. As far as it looks like from reading the liner notes that he played, basically, there are some guests, like I think somebody on cello or something, but it sounds like reading the liner notes that he played guitars, bass, drums.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, so, and yet it comes across very authentic and very, like it kind of like when we said the Pugwash album, where it's basically one person doing most of the instrumentation, but it sure doesn't sound like that. It sounds like it's a band in a room.
Awesome.
Very, very great album.
I have to hand it to you, Robert, because you do, you are part of the media. You do get a lot of stuff sent to you, constantly. You get bombarded with stuff. And, of course, you see a major release by a major artist. Of course, you're going to put that on and hear it because you're curious.
Yeah.
It's just human nature. But the fact that you do pay attention to these artists that, like, I don't know who this is, but let's find out.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's find out. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
and musicians all around the world do. So.
Yeah, wish I had.
Thank you.
Wish I had more hours in the day.
Yeah, just hours in the day. Hours in the day. I know what
it.
you mean. I'm not a member of the media, except for the internet, I guess. I'm a member of the internet, but I'm not a member of the media. I don't get sent a bunch of stuff. But it's still, there's so much stuff coming out, and sometimes my favorite artists release stuff, and I don't know about it for like weeks later.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
Yeah, I just found out yesterday, and we're at the end of 2017. Ron Sexsmith came out with an album back in April. I didn't even know it.
Whoa,
because
I
didn't
know
get
you
it,
like
and
him
I'm
a
a
lot.
fan,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna have to seek that one out. But that's what I mean. I get so much music, and I know you hear a lot too. And there's Tidal, there's Spotify, there's Pandora,
Yeah.
there's you turn on MTV, there's videos, and so I mean it's literally they talk about the death of the music industry, but that fortunately has not meant the death of great music making, because that, as evidenced by this year and all the things we're trying to catch up on, there's plenty of great music out there.
There's not been a death of great music making. It's just how do people become aware of it and know about it. And that's why we do this. That's hopefully we help in some small way, help expose you folks to new music that you're going to want to check out and hopefully make part of the soundtrack of your life. And it's the end of 2017 right now. I know we're going to talk about our favorite albums of the year later on another show. And it's just been a shame that we have not been able to get together like we have in the past and we could have done separate shows where we did 2 albums at a time. But we had to talk about these albums. I'm glad we could just kind of get them in here, even though we had to get them in quickly. Get them in here. But thank you, folks, so much for watching. As always, please subscribe to the channel. And if you do subscribe, be sure to hit that little bell icon to get notifications so you know when new videos get released. And till next time, I'm TJR.
And I'm Robert Kinsler.
And we'll see y'all soon. Bye.
Bye. See you later.